And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek. Today we are going to take a look at a pretty controversial game that started a lot of buzz earlier this year on the Board Game Geek forums, and we are essentially leaders of major powers, and between us and some leading scientists we have figured out that lack of resource overpopulation is going to doom humanity. So we take on the role of one of 6 major powers, and collaboratively we are negotiating and trying to depopulate the Earth so that we can save humanity. Sounds grim, but we're still trying to save humanity. So anyway, we're going to be doing that in a game called Tomorrow. It's from Conquistador Games. It's 4 to 6 players. Plays in about 2 hours, and it's got a lot of negotiation. It's kind of like Cutthroat Caverns meets Risk, if you will, because there's a lot of, it's semi-cooperative. You all have to work together, but only one person can win, or you all lose. Sound interesting? Let's check it out. Over the game, you're cooperatively trying to work together to reduce the population all the way through the 3 different levels of the threat, all the way down to the happy face, and the game will end there, and then you have final scoring. If by the end of the 9th round, there's only 9 rounds in this game, you do not get the death marker all the way to the happy face, everybody loses. There are 6 major powers, and everybody else is a minor power. The 6 major powers in the game are United States, European Union, Russia, China. If you're playing with 4 players, those are the 4 countries that will get played. If there's a 5th player, the Arab Caliphate is added, and if there's a 6th player, India is also added. Now each of these countries play very differently. For example, the United States has the most military of 4, and they have 4 nukes. Russia also has a lot of military and a lot of nukes, but you go and you look at, say, the Arab Caliphate, and they only have 2 military and 1 nuke. So strategies between these different countries and the personalities that you're going to have to play like when you play each of these are going to be quite different, and so no matter who you are, it's always going to be a different type of game. Also, each of the major powers have a special ability. We will talk about those in more detail in a little bit. As I mentioned, there's 9 rounds. There's 12 of these event cards in the game. You randomly take 9 of them, shuffle them, and at the end of the 9th card, you know it's the end of the game. At the beginning each round, there is an event phase, or an event is popped up. Now you can see we're at 3 different levels of threat track here, and depending on where the death marker is one of those 3 tracks, depending on one of the 3 events that happens on that event card. For example, at the beginning of the game, we're in the yellow death threat marker, and this is peace protests. No one may nuke anybody this turn. Or it might be something like global quarantine, biological, military, and nuke attacks. This turn may only affect territories the acting player controls or are next to. So this, different things. So the events just do a lot of different things. They pretty much break rules, and they do special things for each round, and they change depending on which part of the game you're in. The next is the cyberspace phase. At the beginning of the game, China starts with cyberspace. It can get stolen from them, I'll show you that later, but typically they will have one of these markers on top of his guarding the cyberspace, one of these 2 keys. We'll talk about that later as well. And the cyberspace allows them to do one of 3 things. It allows them to take the ability to assign turn order for the round, or they can steal strategy cards. Stealing or taking strategy cards, these cards are given out throughout the game. I'll explain how later, but there's ones for the 3 different threat levels, and they do things. They help you break rules, they help you get points, so you could steal one of those from a player if they haven't played it yet, or you can simply grab one depending on the level of threat that you're at in the game. So if it's the beginning of the game or in the yellow, they could take a yellow strategy card. For example, a yellow strategy card here could be an antidote, which means play this to prevent 1 disease from spreading into the territory you control, including your capital. Now, whether or not you play this at the end, you're going to get 1 extra point at the end of the game. If it's face down, you have not done anything and somebody could steal it from you. If you do it face up and you've played it to prevent it, nobody can steal it from you, but you get the points either way if you hold the card at the end of the game. And maybe a 3rd level strategy, these are pretty much always just points, would give you 3 points. So the strategy cards are actually pretty big in this game. Next phase is action allocation phase. Everybody has the same 5 cards to choose from. Some countries will have a 6th if their special ability has that for them. They're going to take these 5 different cards. They're going to select 2 of them that they're going to be able to play this round, and they're going to put them face down. This is going to be the only 2 actions they can select this round, and everyone does it simultaneously, and no one can see what anybody else's action is. Then turn order is going to get set one at a time. By default, it's the European Union special ability to set turn order, or the person who has the cyber card that round can exhibit that and say, I'm going to do turn order this round. And they say maybe, hey, China, you're going to go first. And they would then pick one of their 2 cards that they've placed, and they're going to play it and resolve it. And then after those are resolved, we'll pick the next person, and so on and so forth till everybody is down for the round. And then we come back and we do a second round because everybody has 2 cards, and then that would be the end of the allocation round. But let's look at what all these different actions do. If you flip over biological, this is the main way that people will get killed in this game. Is in the biological, you're going to take one of your 3. Everyone starts with 3 disease cards. They're going to take one of the cards that they have selected, and they are going to put it face down here, and that's it. They're not going to say a word. Everybody else can now ask where this is going. What country is it going to? The person that put it down can either not answer, or they can answer, and their answer could be truthful, or it could be lying. It's up to that person. And then people will kind of negotiate to see if somebody would like to block this biological attack. The other thing you can do with this card is if you're out of disease cards or you're low, when you play this card, you can pick up 2 more of these disease cards for your turn. But in this case, we're playing it. So we're going to play it and we're going to wait. Now, everybody else also has another card. A second card I'm going to show you what it does is an espionage card. This blocks a biological attack. So if somebody has this, if he says, hey, if he's truthful and says, hey, I'm going to the Arab Caliphate with it, and the person who's playing Arab Caliphate has an espionage card, they could play it and it would block it. If that resolves and that ends there, this disease gets discarded, face down in the bottom of the deck there. If they espionage it, another player could espionage on top of this, which would cancel out this block, which means this would actually go. So you could have different layers of, hey, I blocked you, hey, I canceled your block. Now, if Arab Caliphate didn't have an espionage card, they could say, hey, does anyone have an espionage card that they've played this round that they can use for me? And I'll, as a favor, I will do X. I will give you a strategy card. I will help you later. I will help you support, So it's negotiation here to help people do it. So espionage blocks, biological. If nobody blocked it, the bio is launched, and it's there's many different ones here. What this says, this is the Whisper Flu, what this says is that 1 person for every 3 pawns would get destroyed in that country, and then we roll a die to see if it spreads. If we roll a 1 through 4, every country adjacent will lose 1 pawn for every 3. So let's see how this plays out. So if I hit the Arab Caliphate, it's 1 for each 3. So there's 4 of them. You always round down in this case. So they would take 1 pawn. The person that launched this would keep this in front of them for sort of a way of keeping score towards the end of the game, but showing that they were the ones that did that. Also, we would roll the dice. Now here we see 1 for every, if we get a 1 through 4, what we did, every adjacent country, you would lose 1 for every 3. So every adjacent country, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this country, North Africa, would lose 2. European Union, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These guys would lose 2. And these guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These guys would lose 3. Central Asia would lose 3 pawns. That would have been a pretty deadly attack there. So let's see how this works with the death marker. These were the pawns killed on that one attack, which actually was that's a really big one. And so depending on what country where they came from, depends on how the global impact and how many places down the death marker goes. So this was the Arab Caliphate, and so for each one of these, you're going to put this down 1. So there was 4 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now for these ones, they were just an other. They were like South Africa. This would go down 2. And European Union is 2. So for each of those, it would go down 2. So a total of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The next action you can take is a cyber. This allows you to try to steal the cyber card from the person that has it. Now remember, they have a secret key on here. It's one of 2 colors. The person that played this card gets to take one of their 2 cyber markers, and if it was America in this case, they would guess what key they have here. He guessed red. This is yellow. He did not get to steal the key because it's a different color. However, for the rest of this turn or round, for example, the yellow has to stay on there, so now everybody knows what it is. If another player later in the turn order had played a cyber card, they know which one it is, and they could then steal the cyber card. And if they get it like that, they would steal the cyber card, and next round they would get to take the cyber action, which is, as we talked about earlier, turn order or strategy card or steal a strategy card. Next action is military. This allows you to only take out or control minor powers. Military does not attack any of the other players or major powers in the game. What this allows you to do is control minor powers, so let's see how this works. So no matter where you are, it doesn't matter where you control things, you can try to do this military action and control any of these minor powers on the map. So let's say European Union played the military, and again, every country has a different amount. Now there's nobody there, so he could just play one of these military actions and he now controls this. He could play more than one if he wants to try to really control it well, but let's say he just did one. He now controls this. So what does controlling do? Well, if you remember, the death marker goes all the way down. For every country, minor power that you control, when the death marker goes from one phase to the next phase for the first time, because sometimes it can go backwards, I'll show you that later, but every time, the first time it goes to the next thing, you're going to get one strategy card from the level it just left for each minor power that you control that has at least one pawn in it. So if European Union had this, there's at least one pawn, and the death marker just went from yellow to red, we would get a yellow strategy card. Also, at the end of the game, for every 2 pawns, you get 1 point for every minor power you control. So controlling minor powers is pretty good because it adds points both at the end and gets you strategy cards during the game. The last major action is a nuke. Now, you think that nukes would be used a lot in this game and they're used to take the population down. In fact, it's the opposite. Nukes are you really want to try to avoid these at all costs. It's really used as a negotiation and a threat than an actual use because it really hurts everybody. Let's say Russia nukes European Union. Okay, so first of all, they lose 1 pawn automatically and Russia would gain this pawn. Also, for one for every 5 pawns that are here, for every 5 pawns that are there, they'd also take 1 more. In this case, there aren't any, so that would just be 1. Now, normally when you kill people, or you depopulate, the death marker goes down in the order that you want. In this case, instead of moving it down, any nuke moves it backwards 3. At the end of the game, any country that had a nuke thrown on them gets -3 points, and any country that threw the nuke gets -3 points. So you really want to try to avoid this if at all costs. The United States special power is always up. It's not a card they play, it's always available. It's the center disease control. Basically, when anybody has a direct hit in the United States, they can roll a die, and if it's a 1 or 2, it does not hit them. And this is always there, it can use it once per turn. So this makes it less aptitude that people are going to try to directly attack the United States. You'd have to pretty much attack them from an adjacent country and hope that the disease spreads in. Now this does not count as an action, so it's a pretty powerful special ability. Next is Russia. Russia is desolate, which means they only have 3 pawns in the game, but no biological attack can spread inside of it because it's in the middle of nowhere. It's thematic. So you have to directly attack Russia in order to take out their pawns. European Union is the Secretary General. They essentially set the turn order every round unless the person with the cyber card uses their cyber card to be turn order for that round. China starts with the cyber card, and once per game they can flip this card over at any time and use it and steal the cyber card from anybody. The Arab Caliphate, their card is actually used in their hand as a possible action. They basically have now 6 cards in their hands. If they play it as an action, they choose a player, any player, and they take any of their 2 cards that they've put for that round and randomly takes it out and discards it, so they can't use it. So it's a terror card. It kind of is a pain in the butt when you use it. Also, once per game, they can pick a player, view their disease cards, and choose one to get dropped on their own capital. This is a card that's excellent to use for negotiation. Hey, the first person that hits me directly is going to be getting their own disease on their own country. So it's used as a threat, but it usually does get used by the end of the game. India is peaceful oversight. So when they can go to control a country, a minor power with military, it costs the same. But once a military holds a country, it basically counts as 2. So if I had 1 token in a country, it's going to cost somebody else 2 to get me out of there. So they can get a lot of points from minor powers by using the military, but then again, they don't even start with that many. India only starts with 2 military, so it's going to be hard. The most they're going to be able to control 2 countries. So that's India's. Now again, if you don't get to that happy marker, the death marker, all the way to the end, by the end of the 9th round, everybody loses. Now, if you get there, here's how you calculate the points. First, every country calculates the surviving pawns in their own country, and depending on your country, each pawn is worth a certain amount of points. Russia, for example, only starts with 3 pawns, but they're 5 points each, where China starts with a gazillion pawns, and they're only 1 point each. Now, you also then count up the one point for every 2 pawns and a minor power that you control with the military, as we talked about earlier. You get 1 point for every 2 pawns that you've collected by killing them during the game. And strategy cards and event cards will give you some extra points there. And then you lose the points for the nukes as we talk about, and you add those up, and the one who has the most points is the winner. All right, well, there's tomorrow. All right, well, this game is definitely going to either turn somebody on or turn somebody off to it immediately by theme, okay? And so if you're not interested in this game, that's fine by theme, but it is a good game. It is polarizing, and it is going to depend on the group. This is one of those experience games that have been coming up a lot lately, and I typically like these because they're usually very unique and provide a unique experience, and I think this game does that. Number one, I must tell you, I love negotiation games, and this game has a lot of it. You're constantly trying to possibly block other people's attack or give them military support, and you're working deals from previous things or for future promises or favors. And so I like that negotiation aspect, but there's also this, the strategy and the tactical aspect of playing your country. Now that brings me to the next section I really like about this game is I think the replayability value in this game is very high because every time you play the game, even if you played with the same people, you're going to get different countries, okay? Most of the time, you're just going to randomly get them. And each country plays so differently, and they all have different roads or different paths to win. Now granted, it does kind of push you down a certain path, but that's okay. It just gives you more focus on what your path of victory is going to be. For example, the United States and Russia have tons of nukes. Are you going to use them? They probably can use them to threaten a lot. Whereas Arab Caliphate and India, well, they only have one nukes, and they can only hit someone adjacent to them, so they're not going to be able to threaten them much with that, but they have other things, like India can hold minor powers a lot easier. So each country has sort of its own nuance, its own strategy, and I love that because every time you play the game, when you play a different country, it's like you're playing a different game. Also, even if you play the same countries a lot, anytime you play this game with different people, the different personalities are going to come out. Do not play this game with someone who gets easily angered, because what's going to happen is no matter what you tell them, they're going to be throwing nukes and you're going to lose. Now about the nukes, this is the one thing I kind of like, but I kind of don't, because the game is really hard. With 4 players, it's very hard to get all the way to the end, especially if even 1 or 2 nukes go off. Unless you're really totally just beating up on each other, the higher powers of Russia and United States get the death marker down. It's really hard. And you've got to go into it saying, look, these nukes are for threatening. Please, use them only if you really have to, especially with the people that get upset. If you have someone who's playing China who's going to get obliterated because he's the most population, they go down by 2. If you put a person there that gets easily angered, he's probably going to start nuking and the game's going to be over. And I got to say, this is my only negative in the game, is that if you play a 2-hour game that's semi-cooperative, and even if you don't mean to, but you get to the end and you just lose and everybody loses, and it's not because the game beat us, but it's because we just didn't do something right, or somebody threw a nuke when we told them not to and we lost the game, it can have the possibility of ending in an experience that's not positive. But if you wrap the game and you explain to people that haven't played before how important it is and how tight it is and how nukes really shouldn't be used unless they really have to, and you put the personalities in the right countries, it can be a great game. So you're going to need the right people, you're going to have the right personalities. Playing with different personalities is great, but the personalities that you pick can also, at the same time, go the other way. So just keep that in mind, that it's going to be sort of a niche market here. I think people are either going to love this game or hate this game. I really liked it. It's very interesting. The different strategies is great, but it can go sideways and it can end in a bad experience if you don't set the record straight or if you're playing with loose cannons. So if this looks good to you, check out Tomorrow from Conquistador Games. Hey, one more thing before you go. If you're about to drop a comment on this YouTube page for this video and you're expecting interaction or a personal response from me, I recommend the place to do that is at my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/thegameboygeek, because I don't get notified when YouTube videos get comments on the Dice Tower Network because I don't own the channel. So if you want to interact with me directly, I'll see you at my Facebook page.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.